AI.
AI.
AI. AI.
AI.
So AI, is it our future overlords or just another useful tool? That's a topic for another video, but I want to test its abilities. How much does AI know about the NFL? That's what I want to find out in this video. AI has been on the rise for the past few years, so I wanted to see how far it's come with this silly little experiment. So I asked 3 chatbots to predict the careers of the top 50 prospects in this draft. For this exercise, I used Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 list, his 4.0 list, since that was the most recent one as of making this video. Now if you go on to enjoy this video, please leave a like and sub. This is part 1 of a much larger AI experiment, so if you want to see future parts, subscribe so you can stay up to date with my videos. So anyway, onto this experiment. So I may as well explain how I got the data for this video. I asked each of the chatbots to first list the top 50 draft prospects from Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 list. And well, 2 of them failed. Gemini was the only one to get it right the first time. Grok at least had the right players, just not the correct order. And ChatGPT, was on another planet. It was not doing what I told it to do. Wouldn't list the entire rankings for some reason, and for some reason included someone who wasn't even in this year's draft. But once the lists were correct, I asked each AI to project the careers of each prospect. Each prospect was put into one of these 5 tiers. All Pro, which means they will be one of the best players at their position in the NFL, earning multiple All Pro selections. Pro Bowler, a very good player who is regularly selected to the Pro Bowl and maybe an All Pro selection or 2. Plus Starter, a good player who's consistently one of the better players at their position and potentially earns a Pro Bowl selection every now and then. Starter, a solid player who is good enough to be a starter for most NFL teams. And finally, Bust, a player who fails to live up to expectations and is relegated to a role player or is out of the league in a few years. I also asked each AI to assign a bust risk rating to each player, which goes from very low to very high. And that's a quick rundown of how each AI projected the careers of all of these players. And now we can get into what the AIs actually said. But I'm going to go down the rankings 10 players at a time. I'll start with 1 through 10, then 11 through 20, and so on. Hopefully this makes it a bit easier to follow. Now on to the actual data. So here are the top 10 prospects according to Daniel Jeremiah. Grok seems to agree with Daniel Jeremiah the most since it gives at least a plus starter rating to 9 of the 10 prospects listed. However, Gemini is the most skeptical of this top 10, giving 4 bust ratings and 0 Pro Bowl ratings. And as you will see throughout this list, Gemini gave out lower ratings overall. It gave 0 All-Pro ratings while the other 2 AIs gave 2 All-Pro ratings. So if ChatGPT gave out 2 All-Pro ratings, where's the other one? You'll see it a bit later in the video, and I think it's really fascinating to whom it gave that rating to. But back to the players actually listed. There's a few that I want to point out. Gemini is not super high on Abdul Carter for whatever reason. This could be something to do with his size. He's not super big and is pretty light for an edge, but everything else about him screams that he will be a star in the league. So I'm going to heavily disagree with this rating. Travis Hunter also had some interesting bust risk assessments. Grok gave its only very low bust risk to Hunter. Meanwhile, both ChatGPT and Gemini gave him medium, despite viewing him pretty highly. Travis Hunter is an extremely unique prospect who's elite at 2 different positions. I could understand some concern about how it will translate into the NFL, but I'm gonna have to agree with Grok on this one. If one position doesn't quite work out for him, he has another position that he can play at a high level. Also, Ashton Jeanty getting a bust rating from Gemini is interesting. This has more to do with positional value than the actual player. Plenty of running backs selected in the top 5 haven't worked out, and Jeanty's usage in college could be a major question mark. But he's such an elite talent, I just can't get behind the bust rating. And the starter rating from ChatGPT is too low in my opinion. Now I want to look at some of the high-risk players in this range. Jalen Walker is a notable one. He's very talented, and the NFL is very high on him. He even visited the Cleveland Browns, who hold the number 2 pick. But I kind of agree with the AIs here. He could be a plus starter if used in the right scheme, but I have some serious questions about him. He doesn't quite have the instincts to be an elite linebacker right now, and he's too small to be a full-time edge. So I think he's going to be a linebacker at the NFL level, but linebacker is not a safe position in the first round. He's a jack of all trades, but a master of none type of player, and that comes with a lot of risk. Another risky player is the assumed number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. None of the quarterbacks in this class are viewed highly, and though Cam Ward is viewed as the best one, he's still risky. He does offer some upside with his arm talent, but he's far from a polished player. I wouldn't be surprised if no quarterback from this class works out. Now I want to look at who the AIs think are the safest players in this range. Mason Graham is the first one I want to look at. His size may be unimpressive, but his wrestling background and his performance against elite talent makes him a proven defender. He's already an elite run defender and has versatility along the defensive line. He may not be the best pass rushing defensive tackle in this class, but his run defense will make him an impact starter on day 1. Whether he can be the Pro Bowl talent that Grok and ChatGPT say he is can be debated, but I think his floor is a plus starter like Gemini says. The other safe prospect in this range is Will Campbell. Arm length aside, there's a lot to like about him as a prospect. His athleticism puts him in high company, and he has good technique. Even if you don't like him at tackle, he will do well at guard, which I think is where he will be moved to in the NFL. It also helps that interior offensive linemen are one of the safest positions to draft in the first round. But I don't want to spend too long on each range since there are 40 other prospects to get to. So now we're in the 11 through 20 range. Less Pro Bowl ratings in this range and no All-Pros. But one of the players who received Pro Bowl ratings is Will Johnson. He's been slowly slipping on draft boards during this cycle, but I think we have to ask ourselves why. He was a fantastic player in 2023 and was off to a pretty good start in 2024 before his injury. And by all accounts, he's recovering from that injury just fine. If he somehow gets into the teens, I think he's going to be a steal. He's going to be a very good corner in the league, and all the AIs seem to agree on that. The other player to receive a Pro Bowl rating was Tetairoa McMillan. However, this was a one-off and I tend to agree with ChatGPT and Gemini on him. He's good and perhaps is getting overhated at the moment, but I think he would just be a plus starter. Speaking of wide receivers, the only other player in this range to get the same rating from all the AIs was Matthew Golden. And getting rated a bust by all 3 is kinda crazy, and was one of the biggest surprises to me while making this list. But after looking into what could be causing those ratings, I can see it. Though he shows great route running ability and is able to make some impressive catches, he can sometimes show the exact opposite, occasionally getting lazy running the route and will drop the ball more than you'd like. He also has an injury history, which is concerning with his size. Though he ran a 4.29 at the combine, he doesn't play at that speed, which is why it was such a surprise he ran that fast. Sure, he does use his speed, but you don't often see that 4.29 speed in his play. But looking at some other surprises, to me at least, there are 2. Jahdae Barron receiving 2 bust ratings and Armand Membou only receiving 1 plus starter rating. I'm high on Jahdae Barron and I think he will be a great player in the NFL, similar to Brian Branch. However, I can see why he has a high bust risk. He's pretty small and his speed isn't impressive. He also plays a position that is typically not highly valued in nickel cornerback. But with his effort and physicality, I think he will be a plus starter in the league. For Membou, I'm very high on him, and I think there's a very good chance he goes top 5, if not top 10. I think he'll be at least a plus starter in the league, so I think the ratings by Grok and Gemini are too low for him. Other than the prospects I've already talked about, no other ratings surprise me. I think Amarian Hampton is being overrated right now. He's good, but just not elite in my opinion. Nick Emenwari may have had a fantastic combine, but he still needs to work on his technique to really put his athletic gifts to use. Emeka Egbuka is a solid slot receiver who I think could be a high-end 2 in this league. Shedeur Sanders may be the most pro-ready quarterback, but his ceiling is pretty low, and at best, he's a mid-tier starter. But I think he ends up being a low-end starter or a high-end backup. And Tyler Booker is a pretty safe prospect. Like I said earlier, interior offensive linemen in the first generally end up doing well. Now it's the next group of players. A lot more bust ratings in this range. However, it also holds some of the biggest surprises on this list. If you remembered, I mentioned ChatGPT gave out 2 All-Pro ratings. Well, here's the other one. Malachi Starks is viewed extremely highly by all of the AIs. He is also the only other player on this list to receive a bust risk of very low. I do think we are sleeping on Malachi Starks a bit, but these ratings are very generous. In my personal opinion, he should be getting a rating of a plus starter, but I do agree that he has a low risk of being a bust. The other big surprise for me is Gray Zabel. Every AI cited the same reason for giving him a bust rating, being from a small school. Though yes, I can agree his small school background does elevate his bust risk, his performance at the Senior Bowl showed his skills are legit. And I think Gray Zabel will be a plus starter in the league, and these AIs are heavily underrating his abilities. Speaking of being underrated, James Pierce is being underrated overall. I feel like the ratings he got from the AIs are pretty accurate. Character concerns be damned, I think he's going to be a good football player. He's one of the best edges in this class and has a pretty high floor as well. But there are other edges in this range that are noteworthy. Mike Green is being labeled as a bust, and I can agree. He had very good production in college, but that doesn't always translate into the NFL. And I do wonder with his off the field stuff if he ends up falling pretty far. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a team to overlook it. Michael Williams, I think, will be a pretty solid edge in the NFL. He certainly has the talent and size to be very good. I also agree on the assessment for Donovan Ezraku, another undersized edge who had very good production. I think he could be a solid edge 2 or a very good edge 3 for a team, but I think he's being overvalued at the moment. And the last edge in this range, Shamar Stewart. Another one I don't disagree with on the ratings. Stewart is a boom or bust prospect who definitely has a better ceiling than just starter, but whether he reaches that ceiling is a different question. I'm not all that high on him, but I would expect a team early in the first round to take a chance on him. I also agree with the ratings for the defensive tackles in this range, except the bust rating for Derek Harmon. I think all of the defensive tackles in the first round will be at least starters. However, the AIs were correct in identifying Walter Nolan as one of the better defensive tackles in this class. He has a very high ceiling with his explosive playmaking ability. If he can further develop his pass rush moves, I think he can be more than just a plus starter. There is a slight bust risk with him, but not super significant. This defensive tackle class is very good, and I think there will be a lot of good starters from this class. Now we get into more second round prospects, except Kelvin Banks Jr. I don't know why Daniel Jeremiah has him this low. All of the AIs agree that he will be a very good player, and in my opinion, he's the best pass blocking tackle in this class. I would be genuinely surprised if Banks were available in the second round. Luther Burden III also falls in this range, but I actually expect him to be available early in the second round. Interesting that the AIs all have him as a plus starter. That's probably his ceiling, though I would agree with his bust risk. Maybe even a high bust risk. But he can be a good player. I also find it funny how the AIs assess Jackson Dart, literally saying don't draft this guy. He's the only player where all 3 AIs gave a bust risk of very high. Quinshon Judkins is also a very interesting rating. This is one of the largest disagreements between the AIs on this list other than Ashton Genty. ChatGPT and Gemini think Judkins will be a plus starter while Grok thinks he will be a bust. I would agree more with ChatGPT and Gemini on this one. He is a powerful runner with great contact balance. He also never fumbles, which is valuable for any running back. He doesn't have top end speed, but I think he can be a very solid number 1 running back for any team that drafts him. I mostly agree with all the other player assessments. However, one rating that really stood out to me, Benjamin Morrison. He is the last player on this list to receive a Pro Bowl rating, and Grok and Gemini also gave him plus starter. His injury cut his 2024 season short, but he was off to a good start. He picked up where he left off in the 2023 season. He's a very athletic man corner who has zone versatility. Though his size is unimpressive, he's very physical. He also doesn't have an injury history outside of last year, so I doubt he will be very injury prone in the NFL. I really do think he's being overlooked by a lot of people. There are some mock drafts I see where he's going in the 3rd round, which I think is criminal. He will be an absolute steal of a corner. Now we get into the last section of players. Most of these players were given bust ratings by the AIs. Maybe overly harsh, but you can't expect all of these players to work out. The one player that was rated by a bust by all of the AIs that made me sad was Trey Amos. He's a great press man corner with elite ball skills. I really do think that it will translate well into the NFL, and I think he'll be at least a solid starter in the league. But I could see why he could bust. The best rated player in this range was Nick Scorton. I think the ratings he got were pretty accurate, and he is getting first round buzz. But I agree with most of the ratings in this range, though I think a few more players will work out than the AI show. But that's how Grok, ChatGPT, and Gemini view the top 50 prospects in this draft. This will definitely be a video I revisit in the coming years. I'll be looking back at this video next year and 3 years from now. Maybe I'll review this video in 10 years, but that's so far off I can't guarantee it. But anyway, how do you think the AIs did? Rate their accuracy in the comments. And if you'd like to see the spreadsheet I used for this video, it'll be in the pinned comment. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.